Hi there, welcome back. It's Sue Tonks. Welcome to Program 7 and becoming a more effective and confident networker. Now, through the networking stage so far, we've talked about preparation and planning and also the avoidance techniques and how to make initial contact with a stranger for the first time. And in the last show, we talked about the 4 things that are really important that you've got in common. When you establish where somebody's travelled from, it might well be that where they live or their work is quite close to somebody that you know or a house that you visit, there's a restaurant that's in the area or the vicinity that you go to. It's, oh, do you know such and such a thing? Oh, I went there last week, it was really good. Oh, well, my brother owns that. Does he really? And the whole point of all of these first questions is to build some connectivity, because as soon as you've got something in common with somebody, then the relationship moves up to the next level. So that's what we're looking for all the time. So the first 4 questions are the key things to get that initial connectivity, that initial commonality for us to grow the relationship. Once we've got through that, we then need to develop the art of small talk. And hey girls, we're far better at small talk than men are. You know, men tend to find that they don't like the small talk. It's a bit, you know, they say it's a waste of time, it's contrived, all of those. So if I'm going to ask you that question, do you like small talk? Now, some of you will say, yes, fine, love small talk. And some will say, no, I don't like it either. Let me just give you a little tip. Small talk equals big business. If we're going to do the big business with the connections, we need to go through the small talk. That's the relationship building part. That's the bit that people will start to see whether they're going to get to know, like, and trust you. So the small talk, even if you don't like it, it's good to get some skills in. You know, in my past experience, I was a Dale Carnegie graduate, and we looked to the book regularly, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And all of the basis and the premise of my networking training is based on building better relationships. And a lot of it's based on that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So if you haven't read it yet, shame on you. Because even though it was written in 1936, it's still good today in showing you how to break down some of those barriers and get the best from those social encounters. So please read it, put it on your list. Now, many people who might like small talk even struggle to get past 2 or 3 questions. So they might talk about a couple of things and then they're like looking around the room and they think, well, what do I ask now? Where can I go with the conversation again? Well, if that happens to you, you're in luck today, because I'm going to teach you 150 questions you can ask at any networking event, whether it's a business event or a social event or a family event, or even it's stood in a shopping queue. So these are 150 questions you can use at any point in time and you will never forget them. Are you ready? First of all, put down your pen. Put down any writing equipment, because this is memory. You're going to memorize these things. Positive attitude. First of all, I want you to imagine in your mind's eye, you are driving home from work at night in your car. The car is the first item. You get out of the car and you notice the building across the street. On the roof of the building across the street is a big business card balancing precariously on the roof. Flying through the business card is an aeroplane. The aeroplane's propellers are tennis rackets. And as you look at the front of the plane, you see the pilot reading a newspaper. And through the little windows of the aeroplane, as it passes you, you see the family that live next door to you waving at you. Hello, Sue. Now, before you think I'm absolutely nuts and that you're watching the wrong program, you know, here's what this is all about, because there's a real reason why I've asked you to remember those particular items. So let's go through them again. There's the car, the building, the business card, the aeroplane, the tennis rackets, the pilot reading the newspaper, and the family. Let's go backwards. The family, reading the paper, tennis rackets, the aeroplane, the business card, the building, the car. You keep that picture in your mind and you will have 150 questions you could ask at any event at any time. So what's the first item? Well, it's the car. And what does the car stand for? Well, it's the journey. So how did you get here? How long did it take you? Which route did you take? Oh, did you see that accident along the way? All of the relationship questions related to the car, the journey, the type of journey the person had. So that's the first thing we had in common, and it's also linked to our memory stack. The second thing is the building. Now the building is where they've travelled from. Is it home? Is it work? Is it a client's house or a client's property or whatever? So the building is where they've travelled from. And then on the building there is the business card. This is relating to all the business questions. But we're going to come back to the business questions like what do you do and all the type of business questions in another episode. So I'm just going to park that for a little while. So after the business card, there is the aeroplane. The aeroplane stands for, it could be business travel, but primarily it's all related to holidays and things that people are doing. So normally we go on a plane, we'd go on a vacation. So depending on the time of year, you could say if it's May or June, so what's your plans for the summer holiday? And the person would then tell you what that it is going to do. If it was September, October, you might say, all right, so where did you go for your holiday this year? So again, it's about the before or the after. If it's November, December, you could talk about Thanksgiving or you could talk about Christmas and the New Year. If it's January, you could talk about, you know, what the person did over the Christmas and the New Year period. So what are you going to be doing over the Christmas period? What did you do over the Christmas period? Did you do anything nice? And again, it's related to that. Also, if it's May the 25th in the UK, then it could well be bank holiday. So what's your plans over for the bank holiday period? Or, oh, what did you do at the bank holiday? And again, it's about the things that we've got in common. If it's a Thursday, you can ask about the weekend. If it's a Tuesday, you can ask the person what they did at the weekend. If it's a Wednesday, of course, you could go either way. So this is important because it's all things we've got in common with a total stranger. Every one of those so far we have in common. The next one is the tennis rackets, and this stands for sport, hobbies, leisure or interests, which is going to be a bit more than football, with second subject being football and third subject, yes, being football. So it's about finding out a little bit more about what the person does, what they're interested in. The weekend question is usually quite good for that. So what's your plans for the weekend? And they might say, oh, well, I'm going fishing. Well, that's a good one, isn't it? The fishing. Oh. You know, and you might say then, all right, so where are you going fishing? What sort of fish will you catch? What will you use as bait? But very soon you'll run out of questions. Here is my key tip today. If you don't know very much about a subject that somebody's brought up, then always ask a past question. I might say to the person, all right, we're going fishing. Oh, so what got you involved in fishing then? What got you interested in fishing? And do you know? They'll tell you. Then, of course, for those fishing addicts, you wish you hadn't asked, because they will probably tell you for a long time. But at least you're building connections, at least you're showing an interest. Remember, we said you need to be interested rather than be interesting. Always on their agenda. So, a couple of things happened to me a little while ago over in the UK when we were doing some networking, and a girl came up to me and she said, we were chatting away, losing my track then. We were chatting away and I said, so what are you doing at the weekend? She says, oh, I'm going to a competition in Birmingham. And she said, I said, oh, what sort of competition? She said, oh, it's a double-sided cross-stitch competition. Well, I know nothing about double-sided cross-stitch, and probably you wouldn't either. So I just took that little tip from myself and I said, oh, right, that's interesting. So what got you involved in double-sided cross-stitch? And do you know, she chatted to me. We also found then we got some things in common with other things that she was involved in, and the relationship started further on. With the guy with the fishing, you know, the question I'd really want to ask is why? Maybe one day I'll have the confidence to ask that question. So anything to do with that whole process of the weekends or interests or hobbies, always a good thing to talk about. Even if you don't know a lot about it, the past question will always provide the key. Then as you look into the front of the plane, you'll see the pilot reading a newspaper. Well, all I can say to you is you need to be up to date in every aspect of what's happening in the news, the marketplace, the finance, different areas, business, sport, social things, all sorts of things. Keep yourself up to date. The newspaper or listening to the radio are all things that you need to be abreast of anytime that you're talking to somebody, because you never know, something might be said and you can contribute to that conversation. A little while ago I was at a networking event in London and I asked a guy about the weekend and I said, so what are you doing at the weekend? And he said, oh, of course, he said, I'm going to the test match for the cricket, you know. Well, I didn't. But I remembered something I heard on the radio that morning, and I said to him, well, I hope the test match at Lord's is going to be as fabulous as it was in Old Trafford the other week. I said, Sunday and the Monday, it was really exciting, just no idea who was going to win. I said, and do you think Freddie Flintoff is going to be fit? Because I understand he's got a bit of a groin strain. The guy looked at me. Women don't speak cricket in the UK, they don't understand it. And he chatted about cricket, they chatted about his involvement in it, how many years he'd been a member, all of these things. And then he would say, George, come over and meet Sue. And before you know it, I had a little group there, all stood round, talking, chatting and involving me in a conversation. You know, I know nothing about cricket. But that morning before I flew to London from Manchester, then I heard on the radio in the morning a commentary that just said, you know, we're on the build-up to the cricket, the next test match in Old Trafford, the next test match in Lord's. I hope it's going to be as exciting as Old Trafford, and the big question is whether Freddie Flintoff is going to be fit because he's got a groin strain. All I did was relate that information at that time, and people bought it. Now, it's not to say I was deceptive, that's all I knew, but it was on their wavelength what they wanted to talk about. So always keep yourself up to date. Business, news, current affairs, all sorts of things. It's up to you. The final thing is the family. And we've left that at the end because, you know, it's very, very difficult to talk about family. Certainly cross-gender, man to woman, woman to man. We wouldn't normally say, are you married, have you got a family or whatever. We wouldn't bring out family at all into a conversation unless it's already brought out. So if somebody said, oh yeah, we're going to Florida this year because it's the first time the children are at the right height and the age that they can go on all the rides, then it's been brought out and now you can say, oh, that's great. You know, how many children have you got and what age are they? And now we can bring into the conversation because they've brought it in themselves. But certainly we wouldn't do, you know, especially not cross-gender. So there's 150 questions. It's about being interested instead of interesting, and always keep that little picture in your mind because you'll never forget what to ask next, and always start developing those strong relationships because that's what networking's about, building relationships and spotting opportunities. See you in the next show.